Okay, it looks like we are live. Oh, it's been a little while since I got a chance to do a live, so I'm excited to be here today doing a live with you. I'm Dr. Sandra, and I am absolutely in love with working with organizations and women who want to relieve burnout and reignite their capacity to do the work that matters to them and build lives that they just feel absolutely in love with. And today, as always, I'm talking about something about how things can happen sort of out of our awareness or out of our sort of usual line of sight that might end us up in burnout. I'm focusing on one of those main burnout symptoms today that we call exhaustion. In fact, I think all of the burnout symptoms reflect some sort of exhaustion, which for me means you're out of resources to manage whatever is happening, right? So today, focusing on exhaustion, I'm thinking about how it is that sometimes the challenge with taking a break, not taking a break, can lead us down that pathway of being way overworked or too exhausted. So, and I'm gonna just check here. Sometimes I don't get the comments if people make a comment, but uh, if you make a comment and I don't reply right away, I will always go back and double check these videos to see if anybody made a comment. And you can always feel comfortable, like if you're on LinkedIn, just message me, or if you go to my website, you can send a contact form, and I will get back to you if you have a question. So today's topic is about, when it just seems impossible to take a break. It just seems impossible, right? Now, sometimes that's because, right? If you've ever heard me talk about burnout before, I actually think about it as being sort of multi-layered, right? So at the center, we might say there's the individual. Around that person is their family. Around them might be the agencies they work for, their local community. And then around that might be the broader community and their professions. And then outside of that are going to be things like the social issues, right? Like, because we know that in the past few years, the pandemic, which is a social issue, which had a social impact, has influenced the way that we work. And so definitely has influenced burnout and how we experience our emotional well-being in the workplace and in our lives every day. So when I think about these things, I'm actually thinking about them multi-layered. So as an individual, we think about this idea of taking a break, right? We all have our stories that we tell ourselves about whether or not we can take a break. So I invite you, first of all, just to think for a moment about what are some of the stories you tell yourself about taking a break. And I'm interested in the stories that really stop you from taking a break. The ones that say, you say to yourself this thing, and then you convince yourself that you should push and go forward. You shouldn't stop. You should actually keep going. So when I say that to you, the first thing that probably may pop into your mind is that the push and go forward means that you've probably gotten a signal from your body that you need a break. But you had a conversation with your body like, no, 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 no. We don't need a break. We need to go on. So what is it that will stop you? Now, sometimes it can be that you work in a very high pressured environment. So remember, in this multi-layered model, right, we're talking about also the things that can be happening in our work environment around us. So it's us, the individual, and then we might be interpreting what's happening in the environment around us. And in that environment around us, there may be a message, and you may see colleagues who just keep pushing. So there may also be a message that this work has to get done and everything has to be sacrificed for the work. And that doesn't change unless we change and we start saying, wait a minute, maybe there's another way we can do this. Maybe there's another way we can lean into team. Maybe there's another way, right? So just think about the story that you tell yourself when your body has said, I need a break. But you say, no, you don't really need a break. We can keep going. Those stories can also come from this individual you. I'm an older child, so sometimes I tell the older child story where you feel like you're the one that has, you just learn that you have to keep things in order, right? You're like next in line after your elders, your parents, your elders. And so now you feel like that you need to make sure you're taking care of things, right? So that is sometimes why we will not take a break. Um, and then there may be some professional codes, right? Some professions, the deal is you work an 80-hour week at least, right? And then you figure out how to do everything else around the edges. So there are many stories that we can tell ourselves about why it's not appropriate to take a break in that moment. So I just want you to just get in touch with one of those stories right now and try to see if you might be able to just kind of trace back to where that story comes from. Is it something that, and it could be combined, right? So one of the reasons we burn out is that often we are the kid who grows up with that sense of responsibility, and we've always had to take responsibility for things. So then we get in an environment where there's the urge, that the message to push and go and take more responsibility, and it's like just the perfect recipe for us to stay in that mode, right? But I want to just invite you. So if you have your story, just think about where you got it, right? And what are the sources? You may have more than one source that's getting you to that place of I can't stop and take a break. And I want to say this as a story that I didn't mention and when I wrote the little description for this, but there's sometimes we have taken on something, but we've just underestimated how much time the thing is going to take. So now we get to a point where we just say to ourselves, I can't take a break because I won't finish this thing in time. I want to tell you that there's actually research that shows that many of us often underestimate how much time it takes us to do things. So if you've ever been in that place of beating yourself up saying, I always trying to get things done at the last minute and I can never get them done. And so now I got to push. And so that's the reason that you push. Know that you are not alone. That many of us underestimate how much time it takes. So if you got that story in your mind and you know where it comes from, what are the sources that support that story of why not take a break, I actually want to share with you the story, one of the first stories I learned about why you do take a break, right? I learned about taking breaks. And that's one of the reasons that I'm doing this talk today, because it is my paternal grandmother's birthday. Mama Louise, we called her. And when we woke up, she would ask us, how did you rest? Just sit with it for a moment. How did you rest? So if she'd asked you that question this morning, what would you have said to her? Right? How did you rest? She was very committed to rest. We took naps. I still love taking naps. We sat on the porch together, talked, watched stories with her, which was one of the ways that she made sure she got some joy in her life every day. And during a thunderstorm, we turned out the lights, turned off everything, and we just all sat quietly together. Now, Mama Louise also had this concept that she called rest broken. Rest broken. So the rest broken kid, the grandchild, was like feeling cranky, out of sorts, and it could be because they didn't sleep well, they could have been sick, something might have happened at school, and they were off. So she would notice this rest broken child, and her, being, I call her the supreme goddess of unconditional love, she was very good at what psychological researchers and scholars call co-regulation. And that is this ability to get to that quiet place inside of herself so that we could find the quiet place inside of ourselves, right? So that is one of the things that we can do, right? When we feel this sort of tension, this sort of like we can't settle down and we can't take a break, it would be like to see if there are people that we can begin to meet up with, to connect with, who can help us feel settled enough to put these breaks into our lives, right? So my grandmother was one of those people. And today I'm honoring her by just sharing this little bit of wisdom that she offered us. Now, this quiet place that she could get to inside of herself is what the Yoga Sutras call that place where we are peace beyond words. And I'm a yoga nidra teacher, so sometimes you'll hear in some yoga nidra systems, there's also this place within us that is absolutely quiet. They include it. And I love including that in a practice when I teach a yoga nidra session. It's just to remember that there's a place inside of us where there's always peace, there's always calm. When our parents, like my grandmother, help us start to regulate, right? That's because she could get to that place within her, and that helped guide us to that place within us. And then eventually we get better at regulating ourselves. So now, as adults, when we've sort of gotten into these patterns of not resting, we may need to find one of the strategies is to maybe just begin to connect with people who help us find that calm place within, who help us to know that rest is okay. Eventually, of course, some real different things have to happen in your life, right? You have to, like, I'm a chronic overdoer, right? Recovering overdoer, I often call myself. And so I've learned that there are these signs when I'm just getting to the point where I'm not taking breaks, or I haven't done my usual meditation that I do every day, right? When I notice that in myself, I start saying, oh, okay, wait a minute. I'm noticing I'm out of my rhythm that gives me rest, right? So I'm inviting you today to just start thinking about where in that story, right, that you can start to actually ease in some rest. What would have to shift in you that would make rest and taking a break okay? Now, I'm lucky that I have this grandmother who taught me about rest, who taught me about the importance of it, because she literally asked us this question in the morning, right? Or after a nap, she would ask us, how did you rest? So that is so aligned with what we know now in terms of like the stress response cycle and our ability to recover, our ability to bring our creativity to what matters to us. When we actually rest, our work is better, right? So my grandmother's thing, when she saw us rest broken, her idea was then, well, okay, how do I get them back to the place where they're the kid who's ready to rock the playground or their homework or whatever, right? Who's excited about going outside and playing with their cousins and playing with the kids in the neighborhood. So that is my invitation to you. It's just to start to think about what are the ways that you can begin to interrupt the pattern that you're in as an individual. And then also, if you're in an organization, there may be suggestions you start to think about how you can interrupt this pattern at work. I'll tell you some of the common ways that people interrupt these patterns in workplaces is you set boundaries around when people answer email. So I might send an email in the middle of the night, right? If I'm up or something, or if I'm like working the evening shift and I have to send an email so the people in the morning get it, but I'm not expecting an answer. I'm not expecting them to answer right away. Another way that people take breaks, of course, is paid time off. But the most um, powerful, I think one of the most powerful ways for us to really be able to take breaks is to really figure out how breaks fit into the fabric of our day. This is really old research on personal energy management that's been around for decades now, which says that when we recover, we actually can bring more to what we're doing. So at an organizational level, you can start to look at where are the spaces that allow people to recover? Where are the spaces in a project that allow for recovery? Where are the spaces in the procedures and the policies that allow people that space to take a break to recover? So that is my invitation to you today, is to just start slowly, because when you're in these patterns, sometimes it's hard to break them, and to think about where you can start interrupting, shifting your relationship with taking a break, or I would call it rest. And where your organization might also be able to make some shifts to help you. If you're a manager, you can start to think about that. Like, where can we make some shifts that would help people feel comfortable with breaks, right? Are we asking for people to work beyond a certain number of hours? Is it unreasonable, the number of hours we're asking people to work? Where are we saying, hey, we appreciate you and we need you to slow down a little bit because we know, right? We want you to last here. You want this to be a long-term relationship with you. And at the managerial level, you might also notice that you have some people who tend to be the ones that stay late, that never take their paid time off, that right? So those people you want to pay even a little bit more attention to and just encourage them to gently start shifting their relationship with breaks and take and rest. So that is what I wanted to share with you today. I hope that you get some real great benefits from this. And if you would like to talk to me more about ending burnout, healing burnout, thriving without exhaustion, flourishing without exhaustion, please, please, please feel free to message me through my website, or if you're on LinkedIn, you can message me on LinkedIn. All right. Have a beautiful, beautiful day.